What double standard ruined your life? My older sister Olivia got the perfect jeans while I got the nose that looked like someone bent it sideways and forgot to straighten it back out. Every morning she'd stand in our shared bathroom doing her makeup telling me, "Too bad mom and dad will never let you fix that," she'd say, while contouring her already perfect nose. Olivia would take selfies with me and then crop me out because she said my nose ruined the aesthetic of her Instagram feed. She loved pointing out my nose to everyone like it was her personal comedy show that never got old. When her friends came over, she'd introduce me as her sister with the unique profile, and they'd all try not to stare, but I could see them looking. She'd buy me nasal strips for birthday presents and tell me these were to help straighten things out. At school, she pretended not to know me unless she needed homework help, and even then she'd make me stand at an angle so people couldn't see my profile while we talked. "You're actually pretty if people look at you straight on, so just never turn your head," she said, like she was doing me a favor with this advice. Olivia started dating this guy from her college who was studying to be a plastic surgeon, and she brought him home for dinner. She made sure to seat him right across from me so he could study my face the whole meal like I was a medical specimen. "My boyfriend says he could fix your nose in like 2 hours and make you look almost as pretty as me," Olivia announced while everyone was eating dessert. The boyfriend looked uncomfortable, but Olivia kept going about how he was practicing on computer models, and my nose would be perfect for his portfolio. My parents shut it down immediately, saying I was beautiful just how I was. But Olivia rolled her eyes and said they were basically guaranteeing I'd never get married, because guys notice faces first, and mine was unfortunately memorable for the wrong reasons. Olivia convinced our parents to let her throw a pool party for her 21st birthday at our house. She told me I could come, but only if I stayed in the pool where the water would distract from my face, and absolutely no photos because she was hiring a professional photographer. I watched from my bedroom window as she and her friends laughed about something on Olivia's phone. Turns out she'd posted a video on TikTok doing a glow-up transformation where she showed a picture of me labeled as the before and then herself as the after. "You should be happy because you're TikTok famous now, even if it's as the ugly sister," she said when I confronted her about using my photo without permission. But then Olivia was walking down the stairs while filming herself for another TikTok about her morning routine and talking about her perfect skincare. She was so focused on her phone screen that she missed the last 3 steps and went face first into the wooden banister at the bottom. The crack was so loud that Mom came running from the kitchen thinking someone had broken in through the front door. Olivia was screaming and blood was everywhere. The worst part, her nose was completely sideways, but not in the same way mine had always been. Bumpy and swollen and pointing in different directions like someone had broken it in 3 places and tried to piece it back together blindfolded. The doctor said it was the worst nasal fracture he'd seen, and she'd need major reconstruction if she ever wanted it to look normal again. Olivia spent the next week crying every time she saw her reflection and wearing huge sunglasses indoors. She couldn't post on social media because her followers kept commenting about what happened to her face and asking if the transformation video had been reversed. Her boyfriend stopped answering her calls after she sent him a selfie. She begged our parents for surgery, saying this was different because it was medical, not vanity, since she couldn't breathe properly through the breaks. They kept saying she needed to learn to love herself, as she was just like they'd always told me about accepting my natural face. Our parents called us both into the living room for a family meeting about Olivia's situation. Mom was holding Olivia's hand while Dad stood behind them with his serious face that meant they'd made a decision. "We've been discussing Olivia's situation, and we've decided to let her get the reconstructive surgery," Mom said while Olivia started crying with relief. "Her nose is affecting her breathing and her mental health, so we're going to pay for the best surgeon to fix everything." I stood there feeling my crooked nose that had affected my mental health for 18 years, while they talked about finding Olivia the best surgeon in the state. "What about me then, since mine affects my mental health too?" I asked. Mom looked at me with genuine confusion and said, "But honey, you're not pretty enough for it to matter." My legs felt like jelly, and my stomach dropped like I was on a roller coaster that just went over the edge. Dad stared at his shoes like they were the most interesting thing in the world, while Olivia sobbed with relief into Mom's shoulder, clutching her hand like she'd just won the lottery. The room spun a little, and I had to grab the back of the couch to stay standing because those words kept bouncing around in my head like a pinball machine. Not pretty enough for it to matter. I opened my mouth to say something, but nothing came out. Just this weird choking sound that made Mom look at me with concern. Not for what she'd said, but like she thought I might throw up on her carpet. My hands started shaking, and I shoved them in my pockets so nobody would notice, while Olivia kept crying happy tears about finally getting her face fixed. I turned around and walked out of the living room without saying anything, because what was there to say after 18 years of being told to love myself just the way I was? My feet carried me up the stairs on autopilot, and I heard Mom call my name once, but she didn't follow. Probably too busy comforting Olivia about her 3-week-old injury. I got to my bedroom and turned the lock. Something I never did because Mom hated locked doors. But I didn't care anymore. My laptop sat on my desk and I grabbed it with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, typing "part-time jobs near me" into the search bar, because if they wouldn't help me, then I'd figure it out myself. The screen filled with listings for grocery stores and fast food places and retail shops, all paying minimum wage, but it was better than nothing. I bookmarked every single one, making a list in my notebook of application deadlines and requirements, While downstairs, I could hear them talking about surgeon consultations. The next morning, my alarm went off at 6, and I stayed in bed until I heard Olivia's knock on my door, asking if she could borrow my concealer for her bruises. I told her no through the door, and listened to her stomp away, calling me selfish, which was so backwards I almost laughed but couldn't quite manage it. At the school, I walked straight to the counselor's office instead of first period because I needed to talk to someone who wasn't related to me. The secretary asked if I had an appointment, and I said no, but it was important. So she had me wait in the uncomfortable plastic chair for 20 minutes. Shreya Hendricks opened her door and waved me in with a warm smile that made me want to cry for some reason. She listened without interrupting while I told her everything, from the years of comments to the TikTok video to Mom's words last night. And when I finished, she handed me a tissue box. "Your feelings are completely valid," she said. And those 4 words meant more than any apology my family never gave me. Shreya pulled out a folder and started giving me pamphlets about setting boundaries with family and dealing with emotional neglect, suggesting I start documenting everything in a journal for my own records. She mentioned that lots of plastic surgeons offer payment plans and sliding scales, especially for cases that affect breathing or mental health, which gave me this tiny spark of hope in my chest. That afternoon, I sat at the library computer and filled out 5 job applications, 1 for the grocery store, 2 for different mall shops, 1 for a bookstore, and 1 for a coffee place. Each application asked about availability, and I checked every box for evenings and weekends because school came first. But money was a close second now. At dinner, Mom made spaghetti and asked why I was being so quiet and distant, like she genuinely didn't understand what had changed. I told her I was still processing her comment about not being pretty enough for my problems to matter, and she actually looked surprised that it had hurt me. Olivia complained that her nose hurt, and she couldn't breathe right through all the swelling and breaks, whining about how unfair it was to suffer like this. Part of me wanted to remind her how she'd mocked my breathing issues for years, how she'd bought me those nasal strips as a joke, but I just twirled my spaghetti and focused on chewing. Dad waited until Mom and Olivia went to look at surgeon websites to pull me aside in the kitchen while I was loading the dishwasher. He tried to explain that they couldn't afford 2 surgeries, that Olivia's medical bills were already going to max out their credit cards, that they had to make hard choices. I pointed out they could have afforded 1 surgery 18 years ago when my problems started, back when it would have been cheaper and covered by better insurance, and his mouth opened and closed like a fish. He didn't have an answer for that, just stood there holding a dirty plate while I finished loading the dishwasher around him. That night, I heard Olivia crying in the bathroom, these big, ugly sobs about how disgusting she looked and how nobody would ever love her with a face like this. The irony of hearing her say the exact things I'd thought for years wasn't lost on me, but I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would, just this hollow emptiness. I grabbed my phone and searched for online bank accounts that didn't need parent signatures since I was already 18. The application only took 10 minutes to fill out on my laptop while everyone else was asleep. I set up automatic transfers of $5 a week from my regular account that Mom monitored. It wasn't much, but it was something I could control without anyone knowing about my plan. 3 days passed before I worked up the nerve to confront Olivia about that TikTok video. She was sitting on her bed scrolling through comments when I walked into her room without knocking. "You need to take down that video using my picture," I told her while standing in her doorway. She barely looked up from her phone and said her engagement would tank if she deleted content with over 2 million views. I reminded her she never asked permission to use my face as the ugly before example. She shrugged and said I should be grateful for the exposure even if people were laughing at me. That night, I sat at my computer taking screenshots of every frame that showed my face in her video. My hands were shaking as I filled out TikTok's privacy complaint form about unauthorized use of my image. Shreya had told me I had every right to control how my image was used online. I uploaded all the screenshots and wrote a detailed explanation about never giving consent for the video. The submit button felt huge on my screen, but I clicked it anyway and watched the confirmation message appear. My next meeting with Shreya was 2 days later during my free period at the school. She had me practice breathing exercises where I counted to 4 on the inhale and 6 on the exhale. We worked through a whole list of coping strategies for dealing with family stress and toxic relationships. She kept reminding me that my mental health struggles from my nose were just as valid as Olivia's new problems. I told her about the savings account, and she smiled like she was proud of me for taking control. She pulled out a folder full of information about different doctors who offered free consultations for reconstructive procedures. "Even if surgery is years away, understanding your options will help you feel less stuck," she explained while highlighting phone numbers. She circled 3 doctors who had sliding scale payment options and gave me the paper to keep. At the school the next morning, I noticed groups of kids looking at their phones and then glancing at me. Someone had shared Olivia's TikTok in our school's group chat with laughing emojis and comments about the transformation. I started taking the long way to all my classes to avoid walking past the popular kids' lockers. Lunch became a solo event in the library where I could eat without feeling everyone staring at my profile. The librarian never asked why I suddenly spent every lunch period reading in the back corner. That afternoon, I found Dad in the garage organizing his tools and asked him straight up about money. He put down his wrench and showed me the actual bills from Olivia's upcoming surgery on his phone. The numbers made my stomach drop because they were way higher than I'd imagined possible. We're already looking at a second mortgage just for her procedures," he admitted while scrolling through payment plans. I pointed out they could have fixed my nose years ago when insurance was better and costs were lower. He just stared at his toolbox without answering because we both knew I was right about that. 3 days later, the grocery store manager called to offer me the cashier position I'd applied for. My schedule would be Tuesday and Thursday evenings plus all day Saturday and Sunday, which worked around school. Training started that weekend, and I met Hattie, who was assigned to show me the register system. She noticed my hands shaking while I practiced scanning items and asked if I was okay without prying further. "First jobs are always stressful, but you'll get the hang of it," she said while fixing my mistake on the produce codes. Over the next few weeks, I watched Olivia's social media presence completely fall apart from my bedroom. Her followers kept commenting on every old photo, asking what happened to her face and if she was okay. She couldn't post new content without people screenshotting her bruises and swelling to share in their stories. The comments section on her posts turned into discussions about karma and whether the accident was deserved. Despite everything she'd done to me, I felt this weird flicker of sympathy watching her whole identity crumble online. She'd built her entire self-worth on being the pretty sister, and now that was gone completely. But then my phone buzzed with an email from TikTok saying they'd reviewed my complaint and removed the video. Within minutes, Olivia was banging on my door screaming about how I'd ruined her best-performing content ever. "You're just jealous that people actually wanted to look at you for once even if they were laughing," she yelled through my door. I opened it and told her she was cruel for using me without permission for years of jokes. She called me pathetic and said I'd never be pretty no matter how much surgery I saved up for. The fight got so loud that Mom came upstairs threatening to take both our phones if we didn't stop immediately. My chest got tight and my hands started shaking while I stood there in the hallway. I could feel my heart pounding so hard it hurt, and the walls seemed to close in around me. I counted 5 things I could see like Shreya taught me during our sessions. The crack in the ceiling paint, Olivia's door handle, the family photo on the wall, Mom's slippers, the carpet stain from when I spilled juice years ago. Then I touched 4 things, running my fingers along the wall texture, my jeans, the door frame, my own arms. I listened for 3 sounds and heard the dishwasher running downstairs, cars passing outside, Dad's TV show in the living room. 2 smells came next, Mom's lavender candle and leftover dinner. 1 taste was just the mint gum I'd been chewing. My breathing slowed down and the tightness in my chest loosened up enough that I could walk to my room. The next day at work, I pulled up surgery websites on my phone during my break. One site showed prices starting at $8,000 for basic nose jobs, but going up to $15,000 for complex cases. Another site had payment plans where you could put down 20% and pay the rest over 2 years. I did the math on my phone calculator and figured if I saved half my paycheck every week, it would take me almost a year just for the down payment. Hattie walked by and saw me staring at my phone looking stressed, but didn't ask questions. During my next break, I scrolled through more sites and found some doctors offered free consultations to discuss options. One name kept coming up in reviews as the best for difficult cases, Dr. Edward Fairchild. His website said he specialized in complex reconstructions and had 30 years of experience. My fingers shook as I filled out the consultation request form, using my saved birthday money, plus my first paycheck to cover the consultation fee. 3 days later, his office called back and I scheduled an appointment for the following Tuesday after school. When Tuesday came, I took 2 buses to get to his office in the fancy part of town. The waiting room had leather chairs and a water fountain with real plants everywhere. Dr. Fairchild was older with gray hair and glasses, and he studied my nose from different angles with this little light. He pulled up some computer program and showed me how the bones had grown crooked and what fixing them would involve. He explained they'd have to break and reset the bones, reshape the cartilage, and it would take at least 6 weeks to heal with bruising for months. Then he told me I should really wait until I was done growing anyway since I was only 18, and things could still shift. The surgery would cost $12,000 for my case because of how complex the correction would be. He gave me papers about payment plans and said to think about it carefully since it was major surgery with real risks. I was on the phone in my room scheduling a follow-up appointment when Olivia burst through my door without knocking. She heard me confirming the date with the receptionist and started screaming that I was trying to copy her and steal her surgery attention. Then she broke down crying and admitted she was scared her nose would never look the same even with the best surgeon. She said her followers would never come back and her whole life was ruined because of one stupid video. I didn't comfort her, but I also didn't say anything mean, even though part of me wanted to. Saturday after our shift, Hattie asked if I wanted to get coffee at the place next door. We sat there for an hour talking about normal stuff like which teachers were the worst and what movies we wanted to see. She told me about her older brother in college, and I talked about maybe studying business or marketing. Neither of us mentioned noses or surgery or family drama, and it felt so good to just be a regular teenager. My phone buzzed later with a DM from some random account saying they'd seen the TikTok drama and wanted dirt on Olivia to expose her. They offered to pay me for screenshots or stories about her being mean to other people. I deleted it without responding because even after everything, I wasn't going to be that person who tears someone down for revenge. Mom announced at dinner that we were starting a new rule about no phones during family time. She collected all our phones in a basket during meals and said this would help us communicate better. It didn't fix anything, but at least Olivia couldn't film me eating or make comments about my chewing affecting my nose shape. 2 weeks later, Mom and Dad were arguing in the kitchen about bills when I heard them mention the insurance company. They denied part of Olivia's surgery claim, saying some procedures were cosmetic, not medical, even though the doctor said she needed them to breathe right. Dad was on the phone trying to appeal while Mom calculated how much extra they'd have to pay out of pocket. I stood in the doorway watching them panic about thousands of dollars they'd have to find somewhere while I thought about my $12,000 estimate. The night before Olivia's surgery, I knocked on her door and told her I'd help her with basic stuff during recovery if she'd respect my boundaries. She nodded, and we both knew this wasn't forgiveness or friendship, but just a temporary truce. Monday morning, I had to give my presentation on the American Revolution in front of the whole history class. I got to the school early and picked the spot by the wall where I could angle my body toward the board. My hands were already sweaty as I arranged my note cards and made sure the PowerPoint was working right. The teacher called my name, and I walked to the front, keeping my face forward the whole time. I clicked through the slides and talked about the Boston Tea Party while making sure to never turn sideways. Some kids in the back were whispering, but I kept going through my facts about taxation without representation. My voice shook a little when I had to point at the map because it meant turning slightly. I rushed through the last 3 slides and practically ran back to my seat when I finished. The teacher gave me a B-, which was fine since I just wanted it over with. After school, Dad was waiting by my locker, which was weird because he never came inside the building. He handed me a $20 bill and said it was for gas money. I reminded him I walked to work, but he just pushed the money into my hand anyway. His eyes looked sad when he told me to get myself something nice instead then. I took the money because arguing would make things more awkward than they already were. That night, Olivia was sitting on her bed staring at her phone when I walked past her room. She was crying and showed me the text from her boyfriend saying he needed space to focus on his studies. She said she knew he was shallow, but it still hurt that he couldn't even pretend to care. I stood in her doorway for a minute, not saying anything mean but not offering comfort either. She wiped her face and said she probably deserved it anyway, which was the closest to self-awareness I'd ever seen. The next day at the school, I had another appointment with Shreya about my progress. She asked how things were going at home, and I told her about the weird tension since Olivia's accident. She pulled out a business card and wrote down Andre Klein's name and number. She explained he was a family therapist who specialized in complicated family dynamics like ours. She said sometimes having a neutral person helped families work through deeper problems beyond just the surface issues. I took the card and put it in my backpack, even though I doubted my parents would agree. At dinner that night, I waited until everyone was eating before bringing up the therapy idea. I showed them the card and said maybe we could all benefit from talking to someone professional. Mom's fork stopped halfway to her mouth and she put it down hard on her plate. She said we didn't need strangers getting involved in our private family business. Dad looked at the card, but didn't say anything while Mom went on about handling things ourselves. Olivia actually looked interested, but stayed quiet when Mom's voice got that sharp edge. I put the card back in my pocket and focused on my food, while Mom kept talking about privacy. Friday was payday at the grocery store and I got my check for $120. I went straight to the bank after my shift and opened my surgery savings account. The teller helped me deposit $100 and gave me a little booklet to track my balance. It wasn't much, but seeing that $100 in my own account felt like real progress. I kept the booklet in my backpack where nobody could find it and judge me. The next Monday, Dr. Fairchild's office called while I was at lunch to say they had a cancellation. The receptionist said I could come in next month if I wanted the earlier appointment. I asked about the deposit requirement and she said it would be $500 up front. I told her I wasn't ready yet financially and would stick with my original appointment. She said she understood and would keep me on the list for future openings. After I hung up, Olivia appeared next to my locker holding her makeup bag. She asked if she could practice covering techniques on me since our skin tones were similar. She said the bruising around her nose was still bad and she needed to figure out better coverage. I looked her straight in the eye and said no without any explanation. Her mouth dropped open and she stood there holding her makeup bag looking confused. She started to argue, but I just closed my locker and walked to my next class. Later that week, I was doing homework in my room when I heard shouting from downstairs. Mom and Dad were in the kitchen arguing about something and Mom's voice kept getting louder. I crept to the top of the stairs and heard Dad mention credit card statements. Mom was yelling about the interest rates and how they'd maxed out 2 cards for Olivia's surgery. Dad said they had to pay minimums on everything else just to cover the medical bills. Mom started crying about how they'd be in debt for years at this rate. I went back to my room thinking about my $100 and how long it would really take. At work Saturday, Hattie was stocking shelves next to me when she mentioned getting her wisdom teeth fixed. She said she'd saved up for 2 years to afford the dental work she needed. Then she told me about this clinic downtown that had sliding scale fees based on income. She wrote down the name and said they did payment plans for bigger procedures too. She was the first person to give me actual useful information, instead of just feeling sorry for me. I thanked her and put the paper with the clinic info in my wallet for later. Monday morning, I called the clinic during my lunch break, and the receptionist put me on hold for 10 minutes before telling me their waiting list was 6 months long. She asked if I wanted to add my name anyway, and I said yes, because even a long wait was better than no hope at all. She took down my information and said they'd call when my spot came up, then reminded me about the sliding scale fees based on income. I wrote the confirmation number on a sticky note and put it in my wallet behind my work ID card. That same afternoon, Mom came into my room without knocking to announce that Olivia's surgery was scheduled for next Wednesday. She started moving things around my desk, saying we needed to clean the whole house before Olivia came home from the hospital. Dad appeared with a list of supplies we'd need, like extra pillows and special gauze and those ice packs that stay cold for hours. They acted like the whole world was stopping for Olivia's recovery while I sat there watching them reorganize my stuff without asking. Mom said I'd need to help with Olivia's care since she'd be taking time off work and someone had to be home at all times. I told them I had work shifts already scheduled, but Mom just waved her hand saying family came first. The next few days turned into preparation chaos, with Mom buying special straws and soft foods, and Dad setting up a recovery station in the living room. Olivia made lists of things she wanted from her room brought downstairs so she wouldn't have to climb stairs. She ordered me around like I was her personal assistant, asking me to find specific pajamas and charge all her devices. I kept my mouth shut and did the basic tasks while focusing on my work schedule that I absolutely wasn't going to change. Tuesday night before the surgery, Olivia knocked on my door holding a photo album from when we were kids. She sat on my bed and started flipping through pages of us at the beach and birthday parties and school events. We looked at pictures from before everything got so messed up, when we were just sisters who shared a room and fought over toys. Neither of us said anything, but the silence felt heavy with all the years of hurt between us. She stopped at a photo of us in matching Halloween costumes from when I was 6 and she was 8. We'd been witches with pointy hats, and she'd insisted on doing my makeup to match hers. Back then, she'd held my hand while we went door to door and shared her candy when I dropped my bag in a puddle. She closed the album and left without saying goodnight, but I saw her wipe her eyes in the hallway. Wednesday morning, we all drove to the surgery center at 5:30 when it was still dark outside. Mom held Olivia's hand in the waiting room while Dad filled out paperwork, and I sat in the corner texting Shreya. I told her how numb I felt watching my family rally around Olivia, while my own needs stayed was ignored. Shreya texted back that complicated feelings about complicated situations were completely normal, and I didn't have to feel guilty about not being more supportive. She reminded me that setting boundaries wasn't being mean, it was being healthy. The nurse called Olivia back and Mom went with her while Dad and I stayed in the waiting room. He bought me a coffee from the vending machine, and we sat there not talking while other families came and went. 3 hours later, the doctor came out to say everything went well, and Olivia was in recovery. Mom started crying with relief while Dad shook the doctor's hand over and over. They let us see her an hour later, and her whole face was wrapped in bandages with just her eyes and mouth showing. She looked small and scared lying in that hospital bed with tubes and monitors beeping around her. The next 2 weeks were brutal, with Olivia crying from pain and frustration every few hours. I helped change her bandages twice a day because Mom's hands shook too much to do it properly. The bruising spread across her whole face, turning purple and yellow and green in waves. I wasn't cruel about helping her, but I wasn't extra nice either, just basically decent, like I'd help any hurt person. She couldn't eat solid food and lost weight quickly, which made Mom panic about her recovery. I made her smoothies and brought her ice packs on schedule without adding commentary about karma or justice. One afternoon, Mom broke down crying in the kitchen while making Olivia's antibiotics schedule. She said she knew she'd said something awful to me and she couldn't take it back, but she was sorry for how it came out. She didn't actually apologize for the meaning, just for the delivery, but her voice cracked when she asked again about trying family therapy. She said maybe having someone neutral could help us all communicate better, and she'd been looking at therapists our insurance covered. I gave her Andre Klein's card that I'd been carrying for weeks, and she actually called him right there in the kitchen. She scheduled our first appointment for the following Tuesday, and promised we'd all go with open minds. That first session with Andre was awkward, with all 4 of us crammed into his small office with its beige walls and box of tissues on every surface. He had us go around and each say why we thought we were there without anyone interrupting. Mom talked about wanting to heal our family. Dad talked about supporting everyone. Olivia talked about feeling vulnerable for the first time. When it was my turn, I talked about 18 years of being told my face didn't matter while watching them move mountains for Olivia's. Andre set ground rules about respectful communication and active listening, and no interrupting or dismissing anyone's feelings. He said everyone's pain was valid even if it showed up differently, and we needed to learn to hold space for each other. At the end, he gave us homework to go 1 whole week without making any comments about appearance, positive or negative. Mom immediately said that would be hard because she liked complimenting people, but Andre said that was exactly the point. We had to learn to connect without using looks as the foundation for every interaction. The first few days were harder than expected, with everyone catching themselves mid-sentence about to comment on something appearance-related. Dad slipped up on day 3 when he told Olivia her swelling was looking better, but caught himself and changed the subject to how she was feeling instead. It was a tiny improvement, but it was something. This awareness of how much we focused on faces. Andre asked about social media at our second session, and Olivia got defensive about her right to post what she wanted. He asked her to consider how using my image without consent had affected our relationship, and if keeping those posts was worth the damage. She argued that they were old posts that nobody looked at anymore, but Andre kept pushing her to think about impact versus intent. Finally, she pulled out her phone and started deleting every post that had my photo in it. Her fingers moved fast across the screen, removing years of content where she'd used me as a joke or comparison. I felt relief mixed with lingering distrust, because she was only doing it because the therapist pushed, not because she understood why it hurt. 3 days later, I sat in Dr. Fairchild's office while he pulled up spreadsheets on his computer. He showed me payment plans that broke the surgery cost into monthly chunks over 12 months. The numbers weren't as scary when he explained how I could combine my work savings with the clinic's payment assistance program. He printed out the papers and highlighted the important parts, telling me to think about it and come back when I was ready. That weekend, Hattie texted asking if I wanted to help with the library's Saturday reading program since they needed volunteers. I showed up and discovered I was actually good at organizing the craft activities and keeping the kids focused on their projects. The librarian asked if I could come back next week, because the kids loved how I helped them make paper butterflies. Every Saturday after that, I spent 3 hours at the library teaching crafts and reading stories to kids who didn't care what my nose looked like. They just wanted me to help them glue googly eyes on their construction paper monsters or read them books about dragons. Hattie worked the desk while I ran the activities, and we'd grab coffee afterward to decompress from the chaos of 20 kindergartners. One evening, Dad knocked on my bedroom door holding an envelope with my name written on it. Inside was a bank statement for a new savings account he'd opened with $50 already deposited. He said he'd add 50 more every month without telling Mom, and the look on his face told me not to argue about it. The next morning, Mom asked if I wanted to come shopping for Olivia's scar cream and bandages. I went along carefully, watching her pick through the pharmacy shelves while avoiding eye contact with me. She asked about my job and the library volunteering, and even though it felt forced, she was trying. At checkout, she slipped a bottle of nice face wash into my basket and paid for it without saying anything. Later that week, I saw Olivia typing on her laptop for over an hour before posting something on Instagram. She'd written this long thing about respecting people's privacy and not sharing photos without permission. The post was still mostly about her own growth journey, but she actually followed through on the message. She even tagged some organization about digital consent and made it her pinned post. During our next family therapy session, Andre asked what changes we'd noticed in ourselves. When it was my turn, I mentioned signing up for individual sessions with Shreya to work on my own stuff separate from family issues. Mom looked surprised, but Andre said it showed I was taking my mental health seriously. After the session, I scheduled my first solo appointment with Shreya for the following week. She helped me realize my worth wasn't tied to any surgery, but that wanting to fix my nose was still valid. We worked on building my confidence through things I could control, like my library work and saving goals. 2 months passed, and the clinic called to say my waiting list number had dropped to 98. My savings account showed $512 between my paychecks and Dad's contributions. I celebrated by buying new glasses that actually fit my face properly and made me feel put together for once. The frames were simple black rectangles, but they were mine, and I'd chosen them myself without anyone's input. At work, Hattie complimented them and said they made me look professional, which felt better than any appearance compliment I'd gotten before. Olivia started treating me like an actual person instead of a prop for her content. She'd knock before entering my room and ask before borrowing my stuff instead of just taking it. These were basic things, but for us they were huge improvements from where we'd started. Dad kept making his deposits every month and even increased it to $75 when he got some overtime at work. Mom started including me in regular conversations about school and future plans without bringing up appearance at all. 6 months after that first therapy session, our family had settled into a new normal. We went to Andre's office once a month for maintenance sessions where we practiced our communication skills. Olivia had deleted all her old mean content and kept her posts focused on her own life without using me for comparison. My parents had contributed almost $600 to my surgery fund between them, even if Mom pretended not to know about Dad's account. I had a real friendship with Hattie, who invited me to movies and her apartment for game nights with her other friends. My library kids made me cards for my birthday that said things like, "Miss Helper is the best," with crooked drawings of butterflies. The clinic waiting list showed I'd probably get my consultation within the year, and Dr. Fairchild's payment plan meant I could actually afford it when the time came. None of us were perfect, and we still had bad days where old patterns tried to creep back in. But I finally believed I deserved the same care and consideration my sister got, whether that meant surgery or just basic respect. Thanks for exploring all these questions with me today. It's been a pretty curious little journey to share together. Until next time, take care. Subscribe for more content like this.